Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I am not in my usual location, so the lighting is going to be a little different. But in today's episode, what we are going to do is dive a little bit deeper into the next phase of the implementation of the Battleboard 2024 tutorial. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and right, so let's go ahead and dive into today's episode and go over a couple of concepts that are important. Firstly, what I would like to share with you guys is the actual data class. So we do have a ship data class, and let's go ahead and take a look at this and see what it is composed of. So we have a shape data class. It's going to have a reference to a ship prefab, and it's going to have a few attributes that we are going to be utilizing them at runtime to adjust the displacement of the actual piece, the model itself, onto the board. So one of those attributes is called the vertical adjustment, so ship vertical adjustment. Obviously, we have to have a ship ID and some sort of a ship name. The ship name in reality is not that critical, but the ship ID is going to be critical in our particular example. The next concept is something called a scriptable object. If you are not familiar with scriptable objects, these are like mini data containers that are very useful for small projects that you can pre-configure and predefine specific data for your game. And they come in handy without having that extensive real database background or backend for implementation. So in this particular case, we have a ship data scriptable object. And let's take a look at that. So the ship data scriptable object is inheriting from the scriptable objects class. And in this particular case, we just have a collection of ship data. And this attribute on top is basically telling Unity that go ahead and create a context in the context menu. When you do a right click on the context menu, go ahead and create an actual sub-menu within the context menu and put Battleship and ship type database as part of that context menu. So whenever you click that menu item, when you right click in the editor, you would automatically generate a scriptable object of type ship data, scriptable object. The way this works, if you go back to the designer, right click, create, and down here, notice that we have Battleship, and right under Battleship, we have ship type database. And when you select that, you can go ahead and name it whatever you want. Testing ship data. And over here, what you will notice is that inside the editor, you would have you would now have the actual interface to the collection where you would be able to add and configure the different types of ship data that you would be incorporating in the project. I've already done this, so that's under ship type database. And notice that we have each one of the model prefabs that eventually we are going to be utilizing linked into it. And I have already adjusted the actual vertical adjustment based on the placement on the board. And then more importantly, every ship has a specific ID, which is going to tie it into the UI manager. If you recall from our previous example, where that would be utilized to enable and disable specific visual aspects of the program and also the size of the ship when we select a particular piece from the user interface. Okay, so very straightforward. So we have a ship data class where it's going to be utilized to basically reference and store the different types of data attributes associated with the ship type. Then we have the ship data scriptable object, which is basically a collection of the ship data where we will pre-configure at design time, as I show you guys in the editor. Right, so you would manually have to pre-configure this, guys. Right, drag and drop each one of these models, the vertical adjustments, and etc. This is specifically designed for the way my board is being laid onto the screen. All right, so let's stop here and let's run the actual, let's go ahead and stop here and run and see how it looks. All right, so now we have executed the actual code, and let's see how this all comes together. This is just for being able to utilize our board manager, and inside the board manager, it utilizes the shipyard to basically place the pieces from the scriptable objects based on the ship type onto the board. So let's go ahead and see how that looks. So we have our first piece stored, our second piece, third piece, fourth piece, and the last one. So that vertical adjustment is basically utilized to displace the ship above the board, because eventually later on we are going to have a plane that's going to represent the water level, and that way we don't want the ship to be too sunk into that particular plane. So that particular adjustment is done, first of all, for the actual ship not to sink below the board itself, and secondly, later on when we are going to generate the water plane, it doesn't, again, get submerged too much into that water plane. So now let's go ahead and stop over here and jump back into the code as far as the changes that have been made on the board manager to make the placements of the ship happen. And also we'll dive into the shipyard where it utilizes the design pattern called the builder design pattern. All right, so let's go ahead and stop this for now. Okay, so here we have our shipbuilder class, and let's go ahead and pick into the shipbuilder class. The shipbuilder class has a protected member called ship and an abstract function called build the ship, which is taking some sort of a game object. That game object happens to be the ship frame, a particular position where that ship is going to be placed, and its orientation, how the ship is going to be oriented. In our case, it's either vertically or horizontally on the Z plane. So let's go ahead and dig into the ship class. And the ship class inherits from our ship data. And the ship data is what we already covered. And this is where all of the ship data is being stored in the scriptable object. So basically, the ship builder is also going to be utilizing the ship data in order to be able to build the ships. Now, in order for this to happen, there's this thing called concrete classes. And let's take a look at what that means. So admiral, or a specific type of the ship, this happens to be the carrier ship. This is a concrete class of a ship type. So let's dive into this, go to the definition. So the Admiral Kuznetsov happens to be inheriting from the shipbuilder, and it's going to have its own build ship function that's been implemented to override the base class. In this particular case, it has its own frame. We are getting the frame. This is being passed from the board manager. And then basically we are utilizing that particular prefab that we just instantiated on the board from that has been passed to us from the board manager. We are instantiating that specific particular model that's been passed to us from the board manager that has been extracted from the scriptable object. And then we are basically positioning it and orienting it again based on the vector 3 that was passed to us and the rotation that was passed to us. In this particular case, the position is being computed based on whether it's horizontal or vertical, and the orientation is going to be, again, unique based on the orientation of the piece when the piece was placed onto the board. So we are just rotating it along the y-axis with 90 degrees if it's going to be horizontal, and we won't do that. We won't be doing any rotation if it's vertical. And that's how this whole thing is put together. So I'm going to have all of this code and scene available for you guys to download. The download is going to be available on the Patreon site. You do have to become a member to be able to download the code. It is going to be on the free tier. So if you do want to access the code, go ahead and become a member on the Patreon site, and you will be able to download all of this scene, the source code, and the models as well to kind of follow along and study the code on your own. All right. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this particular episode. There's a lot of things to cover. If you guys want me to get a little more into the details of design patterns, do let me know. I can create a few videos on the different types of design patterns that are available, and we can have a series on that as well. That has nothing to do with Unity, but it's really cool to see them applied in a particular application. So I think it's a good idea to, once you understand how these design patterns work, you can apply them internally to your projects. So this code and all of the other code that we have been working on is going to be available for you guys. All you need to do is go to the Patreon site and become a member. Membership is free again. So there's a different tiers of membership. If you guys have the opportunity to buy me a coffee, I would really appreciate that. If not, not a problem. You do need to become a member on the Patreon site to be able to download the source code and everything that is associated with it. Thank you for watching, and see you guys soon. Don't forget to like and subscribe.